Okay, we're going to do a little test run here in the snow and see if it stays clear enough, because the snow's melting on my window and then it's getting blurry. So let's see what we can do. So I continue. Okay, the next one says, I know. In the videotape of 6th grade girls, Shannon and Julia, like the 2nd grade girls, reinforce each other's feelings. For example, Shannon repeatedly agrees with Julia about Mary. Here is what they say right after the excerpt in which Julia says that Mary gets mad, whereas she doesn't. Shannon says, she tries to upset people. Julia says, she does. And she just sees me crying and everything. She just lets me suffer. Shannon says, and she loves it. Julia says, I know she enjoys the whole thing. Shannon supports Julia's complaint about Mary by offering similar observations, and Julia incorporates Shannon's additions into her complaints. The next one, the same topic with a difference. Even when the 6th grade boys and girls talk about the same thing, what they talk about is different. For example, both pairs of friends begin by reporting what happened the night before, but Julia tells about a problem with her father, while Tom tells about a problem with the television. First, the boys. Tom and Walt. Tom starts, man, yesterday we were sitting and watching cable TV. Some big old jet came flying by, sounded like he was going to land. Walt laughs. Tom then says, and then our cable went out yesterday. Walt says, ours too. And that was that. Now here's the girls. Julia starts, guess what happened last night? Shannon says, what? Julia continues. I went, okay, last night, my brother, okay, my dad said, Julia, you got to pick up by yourself. And I said, well, if my brother doesn't have to. And so me and my dad got into a big fight and everything, and, oh God, and I bit him. I couldn't believe it. Oh God. Shannon says, oh my gosh, did he get mad? Julia says, yeah, but not right now. Just, I went in my room. I locked the door. Julia told about interacting with a person, her father, and Tom told about interacting with an object, the television. Her story is also longer than any turn produced by the boys at the same age, and it is talk about a fight, a primary female concern because fights threaten intimacy. Another aspect of Julia's story that is typical of girls and women is that she recreates the drama of what happened between people by acting out what they said in dialogue. She takes on her father's voice. Julia, you gotta pick up by yourself. And enacts her protest. Well, if my brother doesn't have to. Because girls and women are concerned with conveying the emotional impact of what happened between people. They use dialogue to dramatize events more than boys do. All right, and the next one. When it's time to talk, you can't talk. Like the 2nd grade girls, the 6th grade girls appear completely comfortable sitting and talking. But the 6th grade boys seem to be struggling to sit in their chairs and to find something to talk about. they say as much. Here's Tom and Walt again. Tom, I tried to think of what to say because we were on film. It's different. Walt, I know. Tom, when you're outside, you can... Walt, I know. I can scream, but not in an apartment. Tom, or you can talk up a storm. Walt, uh-huh. Tom, when it's time to talk, you can't talk. Walt seems to take Tom's mention of being outside as a reference to the benefits of playing outside rather than inside. And he supports the idea with the example that it's okay to scream outside. But Tom seems to be referring to the world outside this artificial situation, commenting on the difficulty they are having in finding things to talk about when they are told to talk. These remarks show that Tom is aware that they are in a situation where they have been told what to do, and he suggests that this is part of the reason they are having trouble finding things to talk about. Though it is not obvious and pervasive, as with the second grade boys, Tom also mocks the situation with the joke, "Smile, you're on candid camera." Even more dramatically, when Dorval leaves the boys alone following his brief reminder, Tom salutes, first subtly and apparently automatically, and then in an exaggerated way, apparently mocking his own automatic sign of subordination. That's only funny because I do that a lot. That makes it sound like it might be childish. I'm going to have to work on that. Yes, sir. Yeah. I grew up having to say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. So it's funny now when you do it in a military way versus, like a peon way. It's just different. But I think I'm going to, based on this, what is this, 6th grade? Oh, my Lord. So I'm doing a 6th grade boy behavior. I'm gonna cut that out. Maybe. If you see it sneak out when I'm in the wild. My bad. Oops. That's so funny. My Lord. Been doing that for a while. Brothers. I'm gonna blame it on having too many brothers. Okay, in response. Back to the story. In response to the discomfort of being in the experimental situation, the 2nd grade boys talk about the games they would like to play. The 6th grade boys imagine being out of this situation when they're grown up. The following example also shows the way that they use the room to shift topics suddenly, something the girls never do. Okay, Tom and Walt again. Tom, man, I can't wait till I'm grown up. Walt, yeah, I know what you mean. Tom, get out of college, go to the Marines, get out of the Marines, go to the Air Force, get out of the Air Force, get married. Walt, yeah, I can't wait till I'm 16 to get my car. Tom, I can't wait till I'm 17 to get married. Walt, yeah, me too. Look at that thing over there. It is touching to see how the boys yearn to be grown up, even though they are a bit confused about what adult behavior they will undertake and at what age. Nothing like this is said by any of the girls in the videotapes. I interpret it as an expression of the boys' discomfort at being children who can be told what to do, and I suspect it comes up here as a fantasy about a way to escape situations like this one. Although more briefly, a similar impulse is expressed by Kevin, one of the 2nd graders, in an interchange about their ages, though he isn't sure exactly what age he is and what that means. I'm almost 10, but I'm not 8 yet. Kevin reassures himself. I'm catching up with big people. The boys show more eagerness to be grown up so they can get out from under in the hierarchy. That's how the sentence is written. Okay, the next one is contrasting concepts of friendship. Despite the striking differences between the boys and girls' conversations, it would be misleading to imply that there are no similarities in their styles and concerns. Differences are not absolute, but of degree. For example, all these children are concerned with preserving their friendships. Here is what the 6th grade boys say about it. Tom: seems like me and you do everything together. Walt: yeah, we're going hunting this Sunday, right? Tom: seems like if we have something to do, if there's a fight, one of us would be on the same side. Or if we have an idea, me and you are automatically in it. And everyone else wants to go against you and everything. It's hard to agree without someone saying something to you. Walt: I know. Tom: because there's one group and then there's another. The good group is the one that always gets picked on. Though the boys, like the girls, comment on what good friends they are, there are differences in how they express it. First of all, the boys' discussion of their friendship is brief, and the topic doesn't come up again, whereas the girls' talk about their friendship goes on at length and repeatedly recurs. Tom's remark that he and Walt are good friends focuses on their doing things together. Seems like me and you do everything together. And fighting is central to their notion of friendship. Agreement between Walt and him, Tom says, automatically sparks opposition from others. He is an agnostic world in which friendship is a matter of banding together against others. In contrast, Julia's claim that she and Shannon are good friends is based on mutual understanding and longevity. Here's that. Julia: at least me and you have been knowing each other since kindergarten, and we know how each other are, and on not fighting with each other. Julia: me and you never get in fights, hardly, and on communicating. Julia says, I mean, like, if I try to talk to you, you'll say, talk to me. And if you try to talk to me, I'll talk to you. Comparing the conversations of these boys and girls in 6th grade, one can see the root of women's and men's complaints about communication in their relationships with each other. The boys do say a bit about their friendships and about other people, but most of their talk is about things and activities and opinions about social issues. The only object the girls handle and discuss is one that symbolizes their friendship. Julia asks Shannon if she has given her a friendship pin, and Shannon says yes. Julia then says she read that if you're really good friends, you give 2. She then reaches into her bag and gives Shannon a second friendship pin. All the girls' talk is about friends, friendship, and feelings. They orchestrate this talk at a level of subtlety and complexity that is not seen in the 6th grade boys' talk. All right, a little bit more. The next one is merged and parallel conversations in 10th grade. Oh, great. Let's see what Crystal's still doing from 10th grade. Okay, moving on to 10th grade, we come to a videotape that has been essential to my understanding of men's communication. The girls at this grade level are very much like the 6th grade girls. They sit drawn up into their chairs. They look straight at each other. And they talk about the problems one of the girls has with her mother and her boyfriend. The 10th grade boys, however, are different, not only from the girls, but from the younger boys. Their postures are the most extreme on the videotapes. They are sprawled out, almost reclining against the chairs they are supposed to be sitting in. Richard, like Tom in the 6th grade, is almost motionless, and he looks steadfastly ahead, as if he had been forbidden to look at his friend, Todd. As Orpheus was forbidden to look back at Eurydice, Todd uses his feet to drag a swivel chair. Excuse me, Lord. Todd uses his feet to drag a swivel chair into place as a footstool, and pushes it around with his feet as he looks ahead or around the room, only occasionally glancing at Richard. Someone viewing this tape commented that these boys look like they are riding in a car. Their bodies are parallel rather than facing each other, and they are both looking steadily ahead, one only occasionally glancing at his friend, and the other almost never doing so. But turn up the sound, and the scene is transformed. The boys are not talking about impersonal topics. Far from it. These are the boys whose conversation was presented and discussed in Chapter 2. They are exchanging the most intimate talk that I heard in any of Dorval's tapes. Whereas the girls talked about problems they had with other people, absent parties, these boys are confronting their relationship to each other, and one is revealing deep feelings of loss and hurt and longing. All right, and the next one. I know what's bugging me. It's going to have a lot of dialogue here in a minute. As we saw earlier, Todd is feeling alienated. He feels left out at parties. He has no date for the upcoming dance and doesn't want to ask anyone. He knows he doesn't feel right with girls who like him, and doesn't feel right with his buddies either. He pines for the past when he and Richard spent time alone together and talked more. Todd's complaint can be seen in the following excerpt. To convey the halting quality of the conversation, numbers in parentheses are used to indicate seconds of pause. Oh, Lordy. All right, Todd starts. What the hell we supposed to talk about? I mean, I know what's bugging me. Richard. What's bugging you? Todd snickers. That we don't talk. Richard. Who don't talk? Todd. We're doing it again. Richard. What? Todd. Not talking. Richard. I know. Well, go. Todd. We're not even making small talk anymore. And he laughs. Richard starts with right, okay, and then he waits 3.5 seconds. I mean, you know. What can I say? Then he waits another 4 seconds. I mean, if you meant everything you said last weekend, and I meant everything I said. Then he waits another second. Then Todd starts. Well, of course I did, but I mean, I don't know. I guess we're growing up. I mean, I don't know. I guess I live in the past or something. I really enjoyed those times when we used to stay up all night long and, you know, spend the nights over someone else's house just to talk all night. Richard. Mm-hmm. Todd. They were kind of fun. Richard. Yeah, that was fun. And then 2.5 seconds goes by. Todd says, but now we're lucky if we say anything to each other in the hall. Richard then starts with a mocking, challenging intonation. Oh, all right. Todd. I'm serious. I remember walking in the hall and I'd say hi to you and you'd say hi there. Or sometimes you'll push me in the locker if I'm lucky. And he laughs. Another 2.5 goes by. Richard protesting. We talk. Todd. Not the same way anymore. Then 5 seconds goes by. Richard. I never knew you wanted to talk. Although most men for whom I have played this conversation comment that it is unusual, it nonetheless happened. What is most striking is the stark contrast, almost contradiction between these boys' words and their body language. Though their words speak of intense involvement, their bodies are in careless, lounging positions. And the next one. Are men disengaged? Question mark. I told a family therapist about my observation. I told a family therapist about my observation that the girls looked directly at each other and aligned their bodies facing each other, whereas the boys looked anywhere but into each other's faces and positioned themselves at angles to each other. She commented, "That always happens with the families I see. The men won't look at me, and they won't look at their wives. The men are always disengaged." But this pair of 10th grade boys who are not looking at each other are nothing if not engaged. They are super engaged, even when displaying disengagement non-verbally. For example, Richard stretches and rubs his face in an elaborate yawn when he says, "I never knew you wanted to talk." Considering these videotapes of boys and girls at different ages and the situations described by the family therapist, I was struck by a massive imbalance. When a woman looks at her therapist and her partner, she is simply doing what she has always done, what feels natural and normal and right. But when a man is asked to look directly at his therapist and his wife, he is being asked to do something different, something he has little practice doing, something that might even seem wrong to do. Proclaiming men disengaged on the basis of their body language seems premature and unfair. They are being judged by the standards of a different culture. This is not to say that the men might not be disengaged, nor that it might not be beneficial for them to try looking straight at their wives and therapists when they talk to them. Just that the interpretation of disengagement is not warranted solely on the basis of indirect physical and visual alignment. Within the bounds of their own culture, there is plenty of evidence of engagement in the body language of the 10th grade boys, ample evidence that they are attending and attuning to each other. Their motions are finely coordinated. They make similar movements in similar directions at the same time. They are acting in concert, creating ensemble, creating ensemble, and it's to borrow a term from Ron Scallion, or to borrow a concept from A.L. Becker, like two geese preening their feathers, seeming to ignore each other but mirroring each other's movements in coordinated rhythm. Why would men and boys look outward, away from each other, and around the room, rather than directly at each other? A likely explanation is that looking directly at another man would seem like hostile action, a display of threat, and looking directly at a woman might seem sexual, a display of flirting. One colleague who made a comment to this effect joined me where I was sitting. Finding a chair facing mine, he pulled the chair further away and turned it at an angle, so he did not sit facing me directly. We both laughed because this instinctive gesture enabled him to sit at an angle to me, just like the boys and men in the videotapes I had shown him. judged by the standards of women who look at each other when they talk together. Men's looking away is a barrier to intimacy, a means of avoiding connection. But if boys and men avoid looking directly at each other to avoid combativeness, then for them it is a way of achieving friendly connection rather than compromising it. The 10th grade boys and girls' physical alignments can be interpreted as different ways of reaching the same goal, involvement, rather than as evidence that the girls are involved and the boys are not. This symmetry parallels their different ways of accomplishing troubles talk, as we saw in Chapter 2. Nancy and Sally spent most of their time discussing Nancy's problems with her mother and boyfriend, and Sally responds to Nancy's complaints by reinforcing them. In contrast, Richard and Todd both tell of troubles, but they respond to each other's problems by downplaying and then dismissing them. Though different from the girls' way of responding to each other's problems, the boys' style of reassuring each other has its own logic. Like their postures, the boys' conversation positions them on parallel tracks. Each talks about his own concerns, while the other belittles them or even changes the subject. But by women's standards, this shows a lack of caring about the other and his problems. But it can be a way to make the other feel better. Talking about a problem over and over might be a way of expressing concern, but it also might make the problem seem more serious. For example, if Nancy felt bad because she had to leave the party, Sally's telling her that everyone was stunned when she left might make her feel worse. But from another viewpoint, Sally is giving Nancy proof that the girls in the group care about her and missed her when she left. The 10th grade girls and boys present a vision of similar goals accomplished in different ways. Both show signs of similar goals. Both show signs of discomfort with the situation and mock the instructions. Sally says, "Talk about Jerry. That's serious and or intimate." And Todd remarks, "Now we have to get intimate." Both pairs do soon settle down and do just what they were told, though the girls' resistance expressed as giggling and joking does last longer than the boys'. In fact, it continues for the first 5 minutes of the tape, at which point Dorval reminds them of their task. During this time, they tease one another, but a teasing put down is rescinded as soon as it is uttered. Sally says, laughing, "Dizzy? No, you're not dizzy." If boys and girls are so different at 2nd, 6th, and 10th grade, what of men and women in the 24 to 27-year-old range? And the next one, adult friends conversation. The videotapes of adult friends talking show a natural development of the young people's styles. Gone is the pressure cooker of emotions concerning themselves and their alliances. Gone is the preoccupation with parents and their authority. But palpably present are the differences in ways of aligning themselves to each other, with their bodies and their talk. Let's look at the 25-year-old women. Although they seem comfortable with the experimental situation, they seem frustrated by their conversation. Their Their struggle arises because one friend feels the other has pushed the code of agreement too far. Okay, we only have a couple pages left here. The next category is, I know we've had arguments before. The strain of negotiating agreements and similarity is felt throughout the women's dialogue. Intriguingly, traces of a similar strain are found in the 6th grade girls' conversation, too. In her eagerness to espouse harmony and eschew conflict, Julia stresses to Shannon that they never fight. Shannon briefly disagrees, pointing out that they do. All right, Julia. Me and you never get in fights, hardly, Shannon says to me long. Julia, till we get in arguments, but not fights. Sometimes we do. Shannon, like when we're playing hopscotch, we get into arguments and fight. And Julia interrupts with, right, but we don't get in fights, Shannon. But it's, and shrugs her shoulders. Not all Shannon's words are entirely audible, but it is clear that when Julia says that she and Shannon do not fight, Shannon subtly agrees. She says, like when we're playing hopscotch, we get in arguments and fight. But Julia insists that although they may have arguments which are trivial, they do not have fights which are serious, and Shannon quickly gives up the disagreement. This germ of dissent grows into a recurrent and controlling theme in the conversation between Pam and Marcia, the adult women in Dorval's videotapes. Pam begins the conversation by saying that one thing she likes about Marcia is that Marcia always agrees with her. Pam seems to intend this as a compliment, a statement about why they are friends. Perhaps she is trying to justify why she selected Marcia to join her in the experiment. But Marcia seems to take the remark as a put down, an implication that she has no mind of her own. As the conversation proceeds, Marcia repeatedly claims that she disagrees with Pam, and Pam tries to dismiss the disagreement, with the result that the conversation becomes an extended disagreement. Okay, here we go. All right, Marcia starts. Excuse me, Lord. Marcia. God, Pam, I know we've had arguments before. Marcia. We disagree on lots of things, though. School, for instance, and since you have such a positive, Pam says, positive? You saw me a few minutes ago. Marcia says, yeah. Well, no, you've got such a positive attitude. Pam says, no, I don't. There we go. Marcia says, see, that's one thing that we do disagree on. Maybe I'm not a very confident person, I guess, and you've got my share. Pam, well, what do you think of my computer science attitude right now? That's the end of that one. Here's another one. One downmanship. I thought there was an S in there, but there is not. It is 4 words all smushed together. One, down, man, and ship. Okay. One of the ways Marcia tries to prove that she and Pam disagree or are different is to point out that Pam is a better student and has more self-confidence. This sparks an intriguing display of one-downmanship. Pam claims not to be self-confident and not to be as good a student as Marcia says. On the other hand, she accuses Marcia of being a better student Then she admits. So here's a little bit more of that. Marcia starts. See, that's another thing. You're always, I'm just so bad about this. I get into a class and the highest that I can really hope to get is maybe a B. I can get a B out of course. I guess it's just been so long since I've gotten an A. Pam. That you don't think about it? Marcia. Yeah, well, I don't think that it's attainable. Pam. I don't either. Marcia. But Pam, every semester when we start school, it's like you talk about it through that you've got to get an A in this course. Pam. A's? I get B's. I try, but I never get A's. I always get B's. Well, maybe except in my psychology courses, maybe. But not even all of them. In this excerpt, Pam reinforces connection by offering Marcia the conclusion of her sentence. Marcia says, I guess it's just been so long since I've gotten an A. Pam says, that you don't think about it? And she tries to play, I'm the same. Then Marcia says, yeah, well, I don't think that it's attainable. Pam says, I don't either. But Marcia does not want to grant Pam this sameness. Marcia then says, but Pam, every semester when we start school, it's like you talk about it, though, that you've got to get an A in this course. Pam, however, sticks to her claim, saying that she doesn't really get A's, and if she does, it isn't often. And the next one, Pam says, A's, I get B's. I try, but I never get A's. I always get B's. Well, maybe, except in my psychology course, maybe, but not even all of them. Lack of achievement, like similarity and agreement, seem to be the commodity with which Pam is trying to barter for symmetrical connection to Marcia. As with Marcia's suggestion that Pam is confident, Pam seems to take Marcia's suggestion that she gets good grades as an accusation to be resisted rather than as a compliment to be accepted. As if in counterattack, Pam points out that Marcia did well in a religion class. You do well on the tests, 15 out of 15, whereas I hadn't even read those chapters. Symmetrically, Marcia disclaims merit. It's a lot of common sense. In this regard, too, the 6th grade girls' conversation contains the germs of this verbal game. Early in their conversation, they trade observations about how bad they are at ice skating. For the women and girls, agreeing and being the same are ways to create rapport. Excelling, being different, and fighting are threats to rapport. The boys are buying rapport too, but they buy it with a different currency. They don't fear disagreement, and they don't seem to need to declare themselves the same. But any strategy can be taken too far, and Marcia seems to resent Pam's assertion that she always agrees. The game of one-downmanship that these women play is reminiscent of a pattern in Iranian interaction that William Beeman calls getting the lower hand. By this game, Beeman explains, is intensely hierarchical in nature. By portraying himself as a lower in status, an Iranian puts himself at the mercy of someone more powerful, who is thereby obligated to do things for him. It invokes a protector schema. Though women may at times take a one-down position so men will take care of them, the game that the women in this videotape play seems to have a very different goal: to reinforce symmetry rather than asymmetry, to keep the scales even by lowering one's own side. All right. I have... We have 2 pages left, so you know that's 4. Because Crystal doesn't like to do math while she's reading. And then we're done with this chapter, and then there's chapter 10 left, and then we're done with this book. And then we will be able to replay this and have this information. Just push play away. All right, here we go. Here we continue. Me and my mouse in my pocket. Marriage. A serious enough topic. The 25-year-old men present a very different picture. They sit at angles to each other, looking starched or frozen stiff. Timothy almost never looks at Winston, though Winston looks at Timothy when he's listening. He often looks away, and when he is speaking, he never looks at Timothy at all. The men show a great deal of discomfort and strain in choosing a topic to talk about. They are very earnest about the injunction to talk about something serious, and to them, serious seems to mean something important in the world, about which they can make a substantial contribution. Here's what they settle on. More dialogue. Winston. How about marriage? Timothy. That's a serious enough topic. Winston. Serious topic, and it doesn't receive a lot of attention. In discussing marriage, a potentially personal topic, they speak mainly in the abstract, making general statements without revealing anything personal. The next is Timothy says, why do you think so many marriages ain't making it? That's, a broad question. Winston says, I think most people rush into it for one thing, and then 6 seconds pass. You just can't wait. No, just can't wait to get married. Timothy says, I think people, a lot of people, and I'm not saying I do, but a lot of people don't have an adequate or a mature, definition in their lives of what love is. I don't know, because a lot of the strife, in my opinion, in marriages and relationships is because the person has the, selfish attitude. There are ways in which these men's conversation conforms to what has been predicted for men, but in other ways it doesn't. According to the stereotype and the findings of some research, women's talk is more hesitant, but Timothy hesitates and uses fillers like and in my opinion, giving the impression of insecurity or not being sure of what he is saying. It seems that the situation is making him uncomfortable. Yet by speaking abstractly, rather than personally, he conforms to expectations of men's as compared to women's speech. Okay. That was my phone warning me. Later in the conversation, Timothy talks about his relationship with a woman that he is dating. He says that he is considering marriage, but has gotten no further than that. He is cautious because marriage is forever, and he is worried because women often try to rush men into marriage. Timothy then says, I don't just want to talk about my situation. After a pause, Winston responds, well, mine's with school, and school is just the epitome of being an unsettled person. Winston seems to be implying that he does not have a girlfriend because he's a student, and therefore his life is unsettled. But he expresses this indirectly as a general statement about the situation he is in. Mine's with school. Timothy asked him the question indirectly by making a statement. I don't just want to talk about my situation. Rather than asking directly, what about you? In other contexts, for example, when trying to negotiate mutual preferences and decisions. Women are often more indirect than men. But when it comes to talking about their personal relationships and feelings, many men are more indirect. And the next one, as we wind down here, a pretty shy attitude. A poignant example of indirectness occurs when Winston says that sometimes men become cautious about relationships because they have been hurt, or in his words, torched. I think a lot of people start off like maybe when they're young, they might have the attitude of what they think is 100% give, and then they get torched, or what they think is torched, and it's liable to just, give them, a pretty shy attitude towards it for a long time. Winston seems to be implying he has been hurt, and that is why he is not in a relationship now. But if this is what he means, he does not say it directly. He does not say anything about any relationship of his own. And the next one, and this is the final one. This happens to be a page and a half. I'm going to tell you right now that I appreciate you. We're reading You Just Don't Understand Me, this book, and we're almost done. I think we have 20 pages left after I get through this part. But if I get cut off, I'm just saying, I appreciate you. Thanks for letting me snow on you in your house. All right, the last one, follow the leader. Comparing the videotapes of girls and boys and men and women talking to their friends in this experimental setting provides evidence for the gender differences pattern. These conversations show girls and women working hard to create a community of connection, bonding through talking about troubles in their personal relationships, and struggling to maintain their individuality in the face of pressure to agree. The boys and men are working hard to preserve their independence in a hierarchical world to achieve intimacy within oppositional frameworks. But it would be misleading to imply that the girls' friendships are entirely egalitarian. An important aspect of these videotapes is the asymmetry in the alignments taken up by the two friends in each conversation. Among the second grade boys, Jimmy is clearly a leader. He has the only extended turn. He gives orders and instructions. He teases, and he initiates most of the conversational moves. Of the sixth grade boys, Tom is a leader who raises most of the topics, is the main speaker, and takes the performer role in the two instances of report talk. Of the 55 topics covered in their interaction, Tom raises 40. Walt, who generally takes a contributing and supporting role, raises 15 topics, of which 6 involve calling attention to objects in the room. The situation presented by the girls is more complicated. The second grade girls are the only ones in whom there are no apparent asymmetries in the footings they assume. The alignments taken up by the 6th and 10th grade girls are strikingly asymmetrical, even though much of what they say seems intended to achieve the appearance of agreement, support, and connection. Of the 6th graders, Julia seems to be the leader. Of 14 topics discussed, she raises 12. Most of the discussion centers around her relationship with Mary, her concerns about keeping friends, and her anxiety about separation and loss. When the experimenter briefly enters the room at the 5-minute mark, Julia is the one who talks to him. Yet it is Shannon who chooses the topic of Julia's relationship with Mary by saying, "Too bad you and Mary are not good friends anymore." Similarly, most of the 10th grade girls' conversation is about Nancy. But it is Sally who suggests that they talk about Nancy's problems. In response to Nancy's question, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" Sally says, "Your mama? Did you talk to your mama?" In terms of the number of topics raised, the girls seem fairly balanced. Sally raises 9 topics, Nancy 7. However, all but one of the topics Sally raises are questions focused on Nancy. Much previous research on topic control assumes that raising a topic is a sign of dominance in a conversation. From this point of view, Sally controls the conversation when she raises topics. Although even this is subject to Nancy's collaboration in making it a topic by picking it up. She can really be said to dominate, though, if the topics she raises concern Sally. In some ways, the 10th grade boys' conversation is more symmetrical than the girls'. Nancy and Sally talk entirely about Nancy's problems, but Richard and Todd both tell about their own troubles, and both respond by dismissing or downplaying the others. Among the adult men and women, Pam is a kind of leader. She tends to set the themes to which Marcia reacts, yet the recurrent question of whether or not they disagree becomes a theme because of Marcia's response to Pam's opening observation that Marcia always agrees with her. The adult men present a similar paradox. The topic of marriage is suggested by Winston, and he is the one who talks to Dorval when he comes in. But 6 of the 7 subtopics by which they actually discuss marriage are chosen by Timothy. Does talking more about her problems put a girl in a higher status position since she's taking up more conversational space? Or does it put her in a lower one since she's being portrayed as the one with problems? No one would suggest that the patient has more status or power in a therapy session, even though he or she does most of the talking and raises all the topics. Does raising the topic imply dominance in the sense of controlling the conversation? If the topic raised is of primary concern to the other girl? I don't know the answers to these questions. I just lost it. But I would know more if I knew whether these girls habitually apportion the roles of troubles teller and supporter in these ways, or if they reverse roles in different conversations. At any rate, it is clear that issues of dominance and control are far more complex than can be captured in surface descriptions, such as who raises topics. And although the girls and women are focused on connection, and the boys and men on status, there are nonetheless asymmetries among the women and the girls, and symmetries among the men and the boys. In all their complexity, these videotapes show that from the earliest ages through adulthood, boys and girls create different worlds, which men and women go on living in. It is no surprise that women and men who are trying to do things right in relationships with each other so often find their partners wanting and themselves criticized. We try to talk to each other honestly, but it seems at times that we are speaking different languages, or at least different gender lex. All right. That is the end of chapter 9. That was called Look at Me When I'm Talking to You. from the book You Just Don't Understand Me. This last chapter is Living with Asymmetry, Opening Lines of Communication. I appreciate you.